Let's try that again.
Come up front if you need to read through.
I tried to make it really big, but there's a lot of text, so some of it is kind of small.
And we don't have a big screen, and this is a small room.
Yeah, I'll read it for you. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I feel like there are more people who need fan fiction validation than I thought.
Yeah, I did come for some of that.
You're like, all right, what is the outcome? Am I wasting my time or not?
No, I've been pretty confident I'm not wasting my time, but it's nice to have someone tell you. Anyway.
Well, I mean, that's largely what prompted this study, is having all of these professional authors tell me that I'm wasted. You know, I wasted 20 years of my life writing fan fiction. And I'm like, did I though? So we're going to find out.
20 years, that is impressive.
Thank you.
I strive to reach those goals.
Thank you. I started writing fan fiction. I guess it's been more than 20 years because I started when I was 12.
I started when I was 12, but very inconsistently. So some of my 12-year-old stuff is still like on the internet.
Mine too. There are a few things. I didn't start posting. I'll get into that in a minute.
I've since lost the files for that, and I have to keep it up there because it won't come back once it goes away, and I need it for the keepsakes.
It's true. That's why Archive of Our Own is so great, because
I love AO3.
even fan fictions that have been abandoned have been reposted there, and you can still find them. Mm-hmm. That's how we still have the Melon Chronicles from The Lord of the Rings,
That's cool.
Which is one of the biggest, like, not just fan fictions, but one of the biggest continuous works of literature that has ever been written. It's like 5 million words or something absurd.
Oh yeah, it's insane. Anyway, I moved to AO3 after fanfiction.net announced that they were going down eventually. So.
When did they say that?
Apparently the site is no longer under maintenance. So it could take 10 years, it could take 1, but if something happens in the background and the site shuts down for whatever reason, it's not coming back up.
Well, guess who's going to be going back and doing a lot of cross-posting?
That's what I heard like a year ago or something anyway. So
it doesn't surprise me. I mean, they don't have... AO3 at least has a nonprofit that they can use to fund their site maintenance. Mm-hmm. Fanfiction.net is entirely ad funded, and it's not sustainable. It's a great platform. I personally like the way it's set up and the way, like, the posting system better than AO3.
Yeah, AO3 is a nightmare to navigate.
It is.
But at least you can put pictures in your stories, so.
True, supposedly. I haven't figured that out yet.
You have to like use the rich text feature instead of the HTML.
Oh yeah, that's... Oh wait, I do use rich text. I was like, the HTML is never going to happen. I did HTML for 1 semester because I had to do it for my job. I was coding in for... we were taking a bunch of very, very old manuscripts that were written by indigenous peoples. And we were coding them into the website, so I had to go through and code them all in HTML. And I did that for about 3 months before I ended up moving universities, and I promptly forgot everything I knew about HTML.
All you need to know is you have an opening tag, you must have a closing tag. Beyond that, there's lots of variations. I'm a little bit like, it's been a while since I've used it. I kind of know like the difference between a span and a div and like that kind of thing.
That's already, I have no idea what you're talking about. My mom had to teach herself HTML because when she started her organization 20 years ago, there was no rich text option for websites. You had to code with HTML from on the background. And so she taught herself how to code, and she built her website. Well,
good for her.
And then she had somebody volunteer to come in and like build the website out. So all she had to do from that point on was maintenance, but it still requires HTML. Yeah. And then of course once they switched to rich text, and then she got like a designated website person, and so now she's like, I've completely forgotten. She's like, I have no idea. I can't speak HTML anymore.
On the bottom, it's basically still all HTML, so it's good to know. But
yeah, if you have to troubleshoot, it's good to at least have it.
Well, the way I figure is that when the world ends, nobody's going to be using the internet anyway.
That's smart. staying. I wish I could.
The hazards of being in charge.
Yep. That's rough.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better. Alright. Yes, if you're doing the QR code game, there's a QR code in the back.
What's the QR code for?
We've got a game where if you scan all 42 of the codes, we have prizes.
Oh.
So, but there's none in the quiet room. Please don't go in the quiet room unless you need the quiet room.
Right.
Don't look for codes.
I didn't know we had a quiet room, so.
Next door. Don't be going in here. No.
Well, next year I will probably try something like that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's very.
For those of you who are concerned, the camera is recording me, not you.
I'm going to start with the announcements just a smidge early, just because announcements are boring, right? We have our selfie backdrop put up finally. It's down by the artist alley. If you're interested in that, it's 42. You gotta take a selfie, right? We have lots of cool stuff going on. There are still a few pitch sessions, and if you want to sign up for those, go down to the pitch session desk, except that it's closed for today. You'll have to wait till tomorrow. Tonight we have Charlie Holmberg's book launch party. We have book signing party tomorrow, or artist sign. If any of the artists show up, I wish I could get artists to come so we could do just a signing instead of a book signing. But anyway, that's a different problem. We have the film festival tomorrow night. We have the banquet on Saturday. There are still a few tickets left if you want. There's all sorts of cool stuff going on there because Michael Hassel is going to talk to us. It'll be great. What else? And then the QR code game. Yay. Vendor room, the art show. The art show is going to switch. Some of it's going to switch every day. I didn't get quite what was going on. So go and look at it because we've got some fantastic art in there. Anyway, it's great. And vote for your favorites. So if you don't get in there today, you won't be able to see today's art to be able to vote until it's better than yesterday or tomorrow. Golly, okay, time for me to stop and to let Cassie go ahead. This is Cassie Fletcher. She is going to tell us about fan fiction and whether it's worth your time. Enjoy it away.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. I said this a little earlier, but this it's not even a panel. This discussion is a bit fuller than I anticipated, which just goes to show that there are a lot of people who feel that they need validation, that they are not wasting their time with fan fiction. I was one of those people. I've been writing fan fiction for over 20 years. I first started posting on fanfiction.net when I was 16 years old, and the stuff I posted was garbage. Like absolute trash. The early stuff that I did is not still on there, but all of the stuff that I did from the time I was 17 up until today is still available on my profile, and some of it is still garbage. But I left it up there because it's kind of like a time capsule, right? It shows how I have grown as a writer, which is how I knew that I wasn't wasting my time with fan fiction. And that's qualitative evidence, not quantitative evidence. And in this world of rationality and numbers that we live in, people want numbers. They want people to say, that you can track it, going up this way and down that way, and this is quantifiable. Well, unfortunately, the overall feel of fan fiction is it's largely qualitative, right? We largely have this feel of, I write fan fiction because of the way it makes me feel. Whether because it makes me feel like a good writer, whether it makes me feel like I am, progressing, whether it makes me feel like I am getting all of these negative emotions out of my body and into this text so that I can send it out into the ether. Whatever it is that fan fiction makes you feel, it's largely qualitative, which means it's subjective. So it's very difficult to get numbers out of subjective feelings. So what I did is I decided not to go that route of asking people why they wrote fan fiction. I will do that qualitative study at some point, but for right now, I'm focusing on just whether or not you are quantitatively wasting your time on fan fiction. So that's what this is. Just as an overview, I put in on all of these introduction slides quotes from authors who are traditionally published. on their ideas of fan fiction. So Anne Jameson, who wrote the book Fic, Why Fan Fiction is Taking Over the World, says writing and reading fan fiction isn't just something you do. It's a way of thinking critically about the media you consume, of being aware of all of the implicit assumptions that a canonical work carries with it, and of considering the possibility that those assumptions might not be the only way things have to be. So what does that necessarily mean? How many of you are English people? Like, have you ever taken an English class where you had to read a book and then you had to give like a critical analysis of that book? Everybody has done that. What is that? That is a dive into the text, looking at it from all sorts of different angles. And who does that better than fans? I cannot tell you how many people I have run into who have been fans of a particular book or movie or television show, and not just pop culture stuff. Like, if you talk to a true fan of Wuthering Heights, you are in for an illuminating conversation. So each of us by nature sees the whole world from one point of view with a perspective and selectiveness peculiar, I can speak English, I've got like 3 degrees in English, to himself. So C.S. Lewis, as one of the foremost writers and of our era, I guess, he has staying power. He is a definite classic writer. After a certain point in time, you can kind of say that this person's not going away, and C.S. Lewis is definitely one of those. So the fact that C.S. Lewis himself felt that there are different ways for each individual to see the world, and not only to see the world, but to share it with others, for me, that was validating in and of itself. So the abstract for this particular paper, this is exactly what you're in for. If you were to sit down and read this paper straight of the way through, why would you do that? Even people who do research don't do that. So regardless of its bad reputation, fanfiction has a broad pool of reader-writer contributions. The purpose of this study is to quantitatively determine the literary validity of fanfiction through the collection of reader responses to both original and fanfiction narratives. 2 versions of the same short story, an original fiction version and a fanfiction version, were used in company with Green and Brock's established narrative transportation short survey measures. It's just a really fancy, convoluted way of saying I wrote a fanfiction and sent it to people. I'm not going to spoil it with giving you the hypotheses. But this is a lot of fun. So the first place you start when you're talking about fan fiction is you go to all of the published authors who tell you that fan fiction is garbage. So we have Anne Rice, who says, I do not allow fan fiction. The characters are copyrighted. It upsets me terribly to even think about fan fiction with my characters. I advise all my readers to write your own stories with your own characters. It is absolutely essential that you respect my wishes. Now keep these names in mind because they're going to be important for another slide. There's a quiz. I think it's immoral. This is Diana Gabaldon, who wrote the Outlander series. I think it's immoral. I know it's illegal. It makes me want to barf whenever I've inadvertently encountered it with some involving my characters. Orson Scott Card, the time to write fanfiction is never. Piggybacking on someone else's financial success isn't how you create a career, and the experience you gain is worthless, since you steal precisely those story elements that you must invent for yourself in order to learn how to create workable original fiction. And then George R.R. Martin, who doesn't know him. I don't think it's a good way to train to be a professional writer when you're borrowing everybody else's world and characters. It's like riding a bike with training wheels. And then when I took the training wheels off, I fell over a lot. But at some point, you have to take the training wheels off here. You have to invent your own characters. You have to do your own world building. You can't just borrow from Gene Roddenberry or George Lucas or me or whoever. I think he's kind of undermining his own point there, because children learn to ride bikes with training wheels so that they can learn how to balance, so that when they take the training wheels off, they're that much more confident in their ability to ride a bike. I don't know if any of you guys remember learning how to ride a bike with training wheels, but training wheels do absolutely nothing. Yeah. They don't even touch the ground. So it's like, what the heck is the point? It's not about the wheels, it's about the confidence. It's about giving you that sense that if you are riding this bike and you happen to lose your balance, something's going to catch you. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then he says the other thing, there is all sorts of copyright issues when you're using other people's work. My understanding of the law is that if I knew about, I would have to try to stop it. So don't tell me about it and do what you want there. That is not true. There is a major common misconception that fan fiction is illegal, and that is not true. It is illegal to publish fan fiction for money based off of works that are currently protected under copyright. But we'll get into a little bit the idea of published fan fiction right now. So professional authors who have published fan fiction and made money off of it. We have Orson Scott Card, who said that it's worthless and not worth your time. He wrote Enchantment, which is a fairy tale rewrite of Sleeping Beauty. It's actually it's actually really well done. And then the Homecoming Saga. I don't know how many of you here are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but the Homecoming Saga is basically a science fiction rewrite of First Nephi. That is literally exactly what that is. Anne Rice, who said that she does not allow fan fiction. If you are a true fan, you will respect her wishes. Wrote Christ the Lord books, basically Jesus fan fiction. E.L. James, I mean that's our. Marissa Meyer, she wrote the Lunar Chronicles, which is literally cyborg Cinderella in space. Marion Zimmer Bradley, the Avalon series, King Arthur fan fiction. C.S. Lewis, Till We Have Faces, myth fan fiction. Dave Wolverton and Timothy Zahn made their entire careers basically out of writing fan fiction. One of my absolute favorites by Dave Wolverton is The Courtship of Princess Leia, so I threw that in there. And then Timothy Zahn, basically everything in the EU that was not tossed out with the bathwater and the baby was written by Timothy Zahn. Virgil, the Aeneid is literally just Odyssey fan fiction without all of the fun stuff from the Odyssey in it. Mark Twain, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, King Arthur fan fiction, and straight up insert fan fiction. This is just Mark Twain in King Arthur's Court, okay? William Shakespeare, all of his history plays and Hamlet and some of his other stuff, but Hamlet very heavily is basically just a public domain rip of another one where he actually made Hamlet insane as opposed to pretending to be insane. And then Philip Dick, The Man in the High Castle. I don't know how many of you know this one. I only found out about it when they did the TV show. But The Man in the High Castle is basically alternate universe history fiction, which is just fan fiction of a time in history that you're a big fan of. So the literature review, Neil Gaiman, who you wouldn't necessarily, I don't know, I guess if you're thinking of authors who support fan fiction, Neil Gaiman would come to mind. So fan fiction, what is fan fiction? So for the purpose of this article, I'm going to define it as such. While many fan work scholars have their own definition for fan fiction, the basic understanding is universal. Fan fiction is a literary work based on the characters, worlds, and or plots of original content creators. That is the working definition I have of fan fiction. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What constitutes an original content?
Something someone has the rights to.
Something someone has the rights to. That's a really good one.
Well, it's tricky because there's so much in the collective conscience that there's a lot of things we throw into our fiction that everyone is familiar with that we can't avoid. We just do it unconsciously.
That is extremely Jungian. You are correct.
This is so subjective as to be unhelpful, but something from a work which... Shoot, now I'm losing my train of thought. Anyway, long story short, I have written fan fiction of fan fiction.
Yeah.
So some part of that original fan fiction that I made fan fiction of was original.
I straight up have done that too. For real. There are some people who write fan fiction so good that it's honestly better than the original stuff, and then that becomes in the minds of the fans the canon almost. I mean, fanon. There's like a huge branch of fanon for especially those major properties: Sherlock, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. I mean, the Mellon Chronicles that we were talking about earlier is basically fanon fact. Like that as far as everybody in the fanon is concerned, that actually happened. So the fanfiction community is an offshoot of fandom in general. is often considered more extreme than other forms of fan engagement, which I don't personally understand. I do not understand why it is okay for someone who is an artist to do a piece of visual art about of a current copyrighted property and be able to sell that and make money off of it, but a fan fiction writer, they're breaking the law and they're going to go to jail. They're going to be fined. That makes no sense to me. But it is what it is. So some of the jargon that you can expect from this, if you don't know fan fiction, there's beta readers, disclaimers, tags, and modifiers. I'm like I said, I've been in the fan fiction realm for 20 years. I've seen it change. I've seen it evolve. I've seen it devolve. So it's just, these are some of the things that you can expect. Interestingly enough, I never understood this, but slash is like male-male relationships and fem/slash is female-female relationships, and yet they still use slashes for het pairings, so I don't know. So beta readers, cross-posting, disclaimer, reviews, kudos. Anybody want an explanation for any of these things? Cool. Moving on. So what the fandom I chose in order to do this particular study was Harry Potter. And the reason I chose it is it's due to its popularity and the sheer number of big name fans who produce fandom defining works. But also because everybody knows Harry Potter. I mean, let's be real. The odds of me sending out a survey on a more obscure property are and getting enough return in order for me to validly say that this is the result of is very minimal. As it is, it cost me almost $1,000 just to get the responses that I did. So the two stories that I did, they're exactly the same, except I changed the names of the characters, and in a few places I changed some minor world building stuff. So in the fan fiction, like I said, it's a Harry Potter fan fiction. It is Marauders era, but post Hogwarts. So it's during that time after James and Lily are already married, and they have Harry, and they're just about to go into hiding. And then I have the original because I wrote the fan fiction first when I was like 12. The original, I wasn't 12 because I wasn't even into Harry Potter when I was 12, so I was probably 14. So the original is actually, I was having the hardest time coming up with names for this for whatever reason. I don't know. It's just like, this isn't important at all to this presentation. It's just a fun fact that I feel like I want to share. I had such a hard time that I ended up just taking the names from an original story that I had already written that was similar enough in construction and characters, and literally just turned this into a fan fiction of something that I had already written myself. So there you go. So it's under 400 words long, but it's still a lot. So I'm not going to sit here and read all of the way through this. If you are interested in reading this, you can find it on my fanfiction.net profile. I'll maybe drop what that is later. So the measures that I used, I measured for 5 different categories. So we had narrative enjoyment, which was pretty generic. How much you enjoyed the narrative overall, and would you read the story again? This right here, question 2, is the only binary question that I had. This is the only one that is a straight yes or no. Everything else is on a Likert scale, which is a quantitative shortcut for measuring feelings. So we can generally say that people fall within this number when it comes to how they feel in this regard. It's like when you go to the doctor and they say, what's the pain? 1 to 10, which is subjective garbage because everybody feels pain differently, but whatever. So it's as close as we can get. A Likert scale is as close as we can get as scholars to quantifying subjective emotion. So then narrative transportation. Question 3, while I was reading the narrative, I could easily picture the events taking place. While I was reading the narrative, activity going on in the room was around me was on my mind. This question and this question and this question, so 4, 7, and 11 are what's called reverse coded. Do you guys know what that means? Anybody want to? Okay. So reverse coding, when you do, particularly on a Likert scale, when you code something, you code for positive and you code for negative. 90% of these are positively coded. So the reverse coded means that they are worded to be negative. And when you do that, you throw those in the mix specifically so that you can tell if people are paying attention, and it keeps them in the moment of what it is that they're actively doing. They have to genuinely think about the question. So if all of the questions were positive, they might just go through and just click 7777777. But if you hit a negative question, you stop and you think about it and you go, oh, that's not what I thought it was. And so you have to go back and check and make sure that the other questions were what you thought they were. So these present a problem when we get into the actual quantitative part of doing this, where you put all the data into SPSS and then you pretend like you know what you're doing and it spits out numbers that maybe mean something. That causes a problem, because if you have these numbers and you put them in and you don't reverse code them, you don't turn them around to make them match the other ones, then you're going to get skewed results. Because it could be that you're getting straight ones on this question, but all of the other questions are straight sevens. So you get that one, it skews your results and says, all of these were positive, but this one was negative, except it's not, because you didn't reverse code it. So basically, you just have to go through by hand and say all of the ones equal sevens, all of the twos equal sixes, all of the et cetera, et cetera. And you even have to do it for 3, even though 3 is in the middle, or 4 is in the middle, whatever it is, it's in the middle. Because I do a 7 number Likert scale, because I don't know, I like 7s, I guess. So then the other 2 are identification. The events in this narrative are relevant to my everyday life, and the events in this narrative have changed my life. This is such a short story in both of its iterations that I was not expecting much from these, just because how can you expect 400 words to change your life unless they come from, I don't know, Jesus or Buddha or something. So character visualization. I had a vivid mental image of male lead, female lead, second male lead, child, and villain. And again, I had all of these listed. So in the Harry Potter one, this is James Potter, Lily Potter, Sirius Black, Harry Potter, and Voldemort. So let's get into the nitty gritty, right? Have you guys been wasting your time for all of your fan fiction writing lives? No. Hypothesis 1 predicted that readers of fan fiction would have higher levels of enjoyment than original fiction readers. This hypothesis was supported, with fan fiction readers reporting significantly higher levels of enjoyment on question 1 than original fan fiction readers. So what I did to run these questions is, because they were all Likerts, I did them all as t-tests. So I just went through and ran each one of them as a t-test. Please don't ask me to explain that. I barely understand it myself. This is a chi-square. This is what we do for binary results. It basically just compares the numbers. Like, I don't know if you guys did this, but when I was in the 4th grade, we had to make a chart, and then we had to write all of the numbers, and you had to figure out how many numbers you got by the time you got to the end of the chart. There's only 2, so it's not that big of a deal. It just we could calculate this ourselves, but why would you want to? So the chi-square also indicated that more people who read the fan fiction would reread than those who did not. So far, so good. So people so far enjoy fan fiction more than they do original fiction. And this, again, you have to keep in mind that this is for a very, very short piece. And so there's going to be, I mean, if nobody enjoyed original fiction, we wouldn't have fan fiction in the first place. So, but you have to be able to give yourself time to ease into an original work. And most people estimate that that's around 10 pages to a chapter. If you are not hooked by 10 pages or the first chapter in a book, you're going to put it down. If the first episode doesn't get you and the second episode doesn't keep you, you're gonna stop watching. If you're in the theater and the first 20 minutes are not engaging enough, you're either going to pull out your phone, you're going to zone out thinking about what you're having for dinner, or you're just going to leave. So it's important to hook your reader. And because this is such a short, there's a short work, there is going to be some level of skewed bias. So just keep that in mind. So hypothesis 2 predicted that fan fiction readers would be more deeply transported than original fiction readers. This hypothesis was supported as fan fiction readers reported significantly higher levels of immersion for question 3 than original fiction readers, and also for transportation, which is question 5. So this right here, I don't know how many of you are academically, intent. I don't know what's the right word for that. But so, I don't know why that's negative, because that should not be negative. That's not a reverse coded question, is it? Oh well. Anyway, I'll have to fix that before I try to get this published. So right here, this is the T number, and this is the P number. So the P number tells you if something is significant. And if it's less than 0.05, it's considered significant. That means that 95% there's only a 5% variance so 95% of the people who read fan fiction preferred fan fiction over the original fiction. That's basically what that means. The T number, I'm not entirely sure why we're supposed to report that. I'm not very deeply into my qualitative stats stuff because they only make you do one class and then they just expect you to know it. So it's very confusing. But then so down here also, so this right here, says it's not significant, but that's significant. Oh my gosh. I used the wrong stats when I was pulling these out because I have like two versions, like the one that I'm actively working on and the one that I started working on. And the one that I started working on, I did all of the numbers wrong. All right, so hypothesis 3 predicted that fan fiction readers would have stronger narrative engagement than original fiction readers. Again, significance, significance, significance. This one was reverse coded. That's why it's not quite to the same level as the other ones. But the one that I found, this one was, like I said, I wasn't expecting a lot from identification just because it's so short. All right, visualization. This was where we get really into the nitty gritty because what this has to do with is parasocial engagement. How many of you guys have ever heard the word parasocial before? Okay, cool. So for those of you who don't know what parasocial is, parasocial relationships are the relationships that we form with people we don't know or who don't exist. And these relationships are formed very similarly to the way that we form interpersonal relationships. So the relationships that you form with your friends, with your colleagues, with your the people that you meet randomly on the street. That's how we form those relationships. They're formed the same way. The difference, of course, is that they're entirely one-sided. You might feel that you know Benedict Cumberbatch inside and out and that you guys would be the bestest of best friends if you ever met each other, but he has no idea who you are. And so that random encounter that you have with him on the streets of London and you're like, Benedict! And he's like, hi! He doesn't know you. This actually runs into a lot of problems. There's been a lot of research on parasocial relationships. There are a lot of problems with actors being accosted over roles that they have played and decisions that their characters have made in these roles, and they get screamed at, they get hate mail, they get all sorts of stuff. It's a fascinating phenomenon. So this is what I really, really wanted to get out of this this study is these numbers right here. And every single one of them was significant, with the numbers for Harry and Voldemort being extremely significant as less than 0.01% of a variance. So why did I want this though? The familiarity readers have with known characters in a fan fiction could pave the way for deeper levels of enjoyment, transportation, engagement, and identification, especially if the narrative is longer or more plot dynamic. So Harry, Sirius, and Voldemort have significantly higher levels of screen time in both the Harry Potter books and movies than James and Lily, which could account for the lower levels of visualization reported for James and Lily. And it's I didn't really stop long enough for you guys to really see this, but I have absolutely zero character description in here. the only description you get of characters are the characters' names. And so when it comes to the original, so this male lead, it would say, Tyler peeked into the living room where Ryan lounged on the couch with Ethan. So like those names, what comes to mind when you hear those names? So the name Tyler, what does Tyler look like?
I don't know the time period either, so I don't know.
That's a good point. Or his brother Ryan. Does his brother does Ryan look like Tyler? Are they that close? Are they twins? Are they stepbrothers? Is one of them adopted? Who knows? There is absolutely zero description in here about what they look like. What does Nicole look like? What does the villain, Stephen Graham, who is that? There's none of that in here at all. But if I were to put in James peeked into the living room where his best friend Sirius lounged on the couch with the Potter's son Harry, how many of you guys know what's going on in this story? What does James Potter look like? Come on. Older Harry. What does Sirius Black look like? I mean, obviously we've all seen the movie, so we're probably all picturing Gary Oldman at some particular incarnation. But we all know who these people are. Immediate recognition, and that's where this idea of using parasocial relationships comes into play. There are different levels of fan fiction. I mean, obviously, we've all read really bad fan fiction, okay? We've all watched really bad fan fiction because fans get their hands on properties and they decide they're going to make a new Star Wars movie. And so we've all been exposed to bad fan fiction in some form or another. But what about the good stuff? Nobody talks about the good fan fiction, right? Nobody talks about the fan fiction that is extremely well written. It has good pacing. It's got good characterization. It's got good messaging. Nobody talks about those. But I have read some fantastic fan fictions that have not only been all of those things, but they've also helped me in some respect or another. And not just me, but other people. There was a fan fiction that I read when I was maybe 16, 17 years old. It was a Power Rangers fan fiction. And I still remember to this day the impact it had on me. So I don't know how many of you are in that original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers age range. I definitely am. And when Tommy and Kimberly broke up, I almost put my foot through the television, which I could have done because it was still tube television at the time. It wasn't none of this plasma screen, you can't do anything but knock it over stuff. So I could have put it through the television. I was so mad because it was out of character, right? We've all had these TV shows, we've all had these properties that we get super engaged in, and then for whatever reason or another, the creator is tired of a character, or they're done with this plot line, or whatever reason it is that they have, and they do something that just doesn't jive. And as fans, we recognize it doesn't jive because we have been deeply immersed into this property, and we know these characters inside and out. We know, these worlds inside and out. So when they broke up, I was ticked. I was so mad, and fan fiction didn't exist at the time because we didn't have the internet. So I didn't know what to do about it. I mean, we did, but it was like not real internet. So 10 years later, when fan fiction is a thing, I go looking for it. I go looking for what's called fix-it fix, which is basically a fan fiction writer takes a property where something has gone fundamentally wrong, and then they fix it. And sometimes that's just pretending it never existed. We all do that. It's like, well, that just didn't happen. Let's continue the story. But in this particular case, it did happen. And the story opens up with Tommy and Kimberly attending the wedding of one of their Power Ranger friends, and Tommy runs into this little girl named Tommy Olivia. And he is very confused. She's like this adorable little olive-skinned cherub. And he has no idea who she is and who she belongs to. And so he ends up like taking her around because they have the same name. And so they bond over that. She's like 5 years old. And my initial thought was Kimberly and Tommy had a kid. That's cute, except for the fact that Kimberly apparently kept that from him for 6 years. That is not the case. The reason why Kimberly why she broke up with him, why she said there was another man, why this whole thing happened within the context of this story, is that she was attacked. And the only way that she could handle the situation was by recognizing that the child was innocent and putting into that child something that she loved unconditionally, which was Tommy. And so she gave the product of this vicious attack a piece of her heart that can never go away. And she was able to grow through it. She's living in abject poverty. She can't, like, her daughter, when Tommy's watching her, he says, well, why don't we go to McDonald's to get some food? And she's just like dripping stars from her eyes. She's like, it's not even my birthday. That is how much poverty that they're living in. And Kimberly didn't go to anybody for help, because when she went to her mom for help, her mom blamed her and told her that it was a lie, that she was not raped, that she was acting like that she was promiscuous, and that, all of this stuff, it was her fault. And when Tommy finds her again, he tells her none of it is your fault, and we're going to work through this. And so he brings her back to Angel Grove, and he gives her life back, expecting nothing from her. He doesn't expect romance. He doesn't expect her daughter to become his daughter. He doesn't expect anything, except he wants to be able to take care of her because he loves her. He even reconnects her with her family and gives her that closure that she didn't have with her mom. I did not expect a Power Rangers fan fiction to make me cry hysterically. It did. It was powerful. It was real, and it was true, and it spoke to me in a way that no original fiction could, because I knew those characters already. I knew them, and I loved them, and I wanted the best for them. And that's something that fan fiction can do that original fiction may not be able to do. Because those original fictions that are written to do those things typically have very small audiences. Because nobody wants to willingly put them into a situation that gets their heart ripped out. And when you pick up an original fiction book, you not only have to have your heart ripped out, you have to learn how to invest in what's going on while your heart is being ripped out. And with the fan fiction, you're already halfway there. I didn't have to learn to love Tommy and Kimberly. I didn't have to figure out who they were in order to be upset that this thing had happened to them. I was already there. And so the author was able to take those feelings I already had and say, now what about this? And that moved me into a position where I was able to think, what if? And that is the real power of fan fiction. Yes, it's important for learning how to write. I am the writer I am today because I wrote fan fiction for 20 years. I wouldn't be half as good if I didn't have that community. Because what people don't consider is it's not just you writing stuff and posting it on the internet to an empty void. There are people there, and they call back to you. And they say, I liked this, or you could have expanded on this, or what if we worked on this? And it's a great way to workshop stuff, especially if you're extremely introverted like I am. And you don't necessarily want to go out and to people. You can just go onto the internet and people, because the internet's not real people. But you can take all of these things and give people the tools and the resources that they need to be able to work through these situations in real life in ways that you never expected. One of the best fan fictions I ever read was a Pokemon fan fiction, dealing with PTSD. Because it's like an entire series, and so you have to like go through the series in order to get to this particular one. But it was written by Twilight Sparkle, I think, or Skylight Sparkle, something like that. And it takes some of the Pokemon movies and then it puts Misty in them. Because I don't know about you, but that was another one of my pet peeves when I was growing up, is that they just like threw Misty out the window and was like, she was never here. So it puts her back in. Especially in like the ones where she totally should have been there in the first place because they were in that region, but it's fine. And it's fine because I read a fan fiction about it, so she was there. Anyway, so it goes through this whole thing about how Ash really is the chosen one. Like, legitimately straight up is the chosen one. Chosen by the god of Pokemon, Arceus, in order to save the Pokemon. And the entire world. And so, you get Team Rocket in the background, who's actually genuinely, horrendously, villainously evil. And they create Mirage Pokemon, and then they go around in the magnum opus of this series, they kill all of the legendary Pokemon and replace them with copies that they control. And everything breaks. The ecosystems, the just everything breaks. The governments, nobody knows what to do. It's like Team Rocket came out of nowhere and just literally broke the world. And the only way to fix it is, I don't know if you guys have seen the Pokemon 2000 with the orbs and the thing. So there's orbs for all of the different Pokemon types. And so Ash and his friends have to go around the world finding these orbs. And for the first like half of the book, it's just a Pokemon adventure, and it's great, and you're just following along, and then Richie gets killed. And you're like, what? That's not how that works. And then there's this heart-wrenching moment where Drew falls off a train and is run over. And then one of Leaf Green's Pokemon gets shot, and they don't know how to handle it. Dawn gets burned by acid because she's being tortured by Giovanni because Red, their father, won't tell him what he wants to know. And this whole time you're just like, okay, but you're so invested. You can't help it. You have to finish it. And then you get to the end, and it's not, you get to the end in that big moment, right? Where Ash is about to save the world, and Giovanni comes up and puts a gun to Missy's head and says, drop the orb, forget the world, or I'm going to shoot her. And he does. He drops the orb. He's like, forget the world. I don't even care anymore. And Missy's like, oh, the flip? No. And so she like knocks out Giovanni and she saves the world herself. And, well, she creates a situation and then tells Ash to go save the world, which he does. And then it just kind of like, you have this lull, because that's you get to the end and you're just like, oh, okay, but now what? You got all of these horrible things that happened. How are they going to deal with all of these horrible things that happened? So she wrote another one where they deal with all of the horrible things that happened. And it's all of them literally in therapy, intermixed with Ash in the Kanto region finals, winning the Kanto regions and becoming a Pokemon master. And it all is just a big mic drop moment. And all of the things that I've experienced in my life that have created trauma that I've carried with me, I have been able to recognize through this, not just this, but in other ways, as things that I can work through. These things are not things that define me. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. And I can continue to survive regardless of whether or not I have been victimized in my life. And I got that out of fan fiction, because I never would have picked up a book that had those things in it about people I didn't know or care about. I don't think I would have been able to finish it. Just because, and it wasn't gruesome, it was just heavy and extremely well written, which I don't know if that makes it better or worse. But anyway, so those are my thoughts. you are not wasting your time on fan fiction. The better you become as a writer, the more you're able to translate your ideas and thoughts into fiction and move that into a way that you can help people in the future. And at some point, I highly anticipate that there will be fan fiction that is being created that will help people in a wide variety of ways, and we will stop looking at fan fiction as a waste of time and start looking at it as a tool and a resource that we can use to build a better culture and a better society. So we got like 2 minutes. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Your fan fiction profile.
Little Minamino.
Could you say that slower?
Little Minamino, because I made it when I was in my Yu Yu Hakusho phase. Yes.
What would be your suggestions for going about publishing your fan fiction?
You mean like actually making money off of it, or just
Putting it out for the world?
Putting it out for the world. There are 2 major fan fiction platforms that I pretty much anybody, you Google fan fiction and these 2 are going to pop up. The one is Archive of Our Own, and the other is fanfiction.net. And Archive of Our Own is generally considered the better because it's more highly curated by the people who put stuff up there. There's a lot less 13-year-olds posting questionable stuff on Archive of Our Own than on fanfiction.net, just because fanfiction.net is a lot more user-friendly about how you go about uploading things. So those are really the only places. But cross-posting is something that people do. They'll have their own personal website or their Tumblr or whatever and post their fics there.
I've seen certain fandoms that actually have a strong following on Wattpad as well.
Yeah, well, Wattpad is purging its fan fiction.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah,
That
so,
sucks.
yeah. Okay, thank you guys for coming.
Sorry for the couple interruptions, by the way.
No, you're fine.
This made me so